record to my laptop because I do not trust the cloud. So thank you and welcome for joining us, those of you who have joined us, to a town hall discussion on student loan debt and Black women entrepreneurs. This town hall is sponsored by the ACLU as well as 1,000 Women Strong. Both of those organizations came together to lift up the plight of student debt. As some of you know, most of the student debt that's held is held by Black women disproportionately. And so, as you know, when Black women get about doing something and getting a task done, it lifts everyone. And so, because of that, that's the current campaign for 1,000 Women Strong. 1,000 Women Strong, their ultimate goal, our ultimate goal, is to lift up the voice of Black women, our communities, and our children, and make sure that we're heard. So, the current campaign, as I said, is student debt. But the long-term goal is to build a Black women's national directory. How many of you out there that have been doing the work wish you had a directory, a binder of Black women, so to speak? Y'all remember that? A binder of women?
Binders of women.
Yes. So it'd be great to have a binder of Black women. And so that's the ultimate goal of 1,000 Women Strong. So we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to ask both Latoya Henry and Dr. Pam Pugh to introduce themselves. And then we'll just begin to have the conversation. So I'll go with Latoya Henry first.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Latoya Henry, and I have been an entrepreneur since 2009. And just a little bit about myself. As a kid, you know how you would play maybe school or different things. I always loved to play office, right? I would always tell my parents to, when they would go to the bank, to bring me home like the deposit slips. I was always collecting pins, staples. Like I always loved to play office, right? So I always think that my first inklings of entrepreneurship came from me always wanting to be the boss, and be in charge. As I started my journey, going to school, initially I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be the next Carmen Harlan. And I was going to be this great award-winning journalist. And I was just going to go straight from school right into being this awesome reporter and journalist. And as I continued my education and studied broadcast journalism a little bit more, I found out that I really liked more of the behind the scenes aspect, right? To be able to control the messaging. So I'm always a talker, a communicator, but who controls the message? And so public relations seemed more of the lane for me than on the journalism side. Journalism, you're supposed to be objective, and public relations, you pick which side and you get to develop the message, develop it factually, hopefully, but develop the message and help to communicate the message that you would like to communicate for your clients, individuals, organizations. And so that's how I ended up becoming an entrepreneur. I started off with a business partner. My initial firm was named Ward Hill Omni Media. Why Ward Hill? She used her maiden name. I used my mother's maiden name. And we wanted a gender neutral name so that people wouldn't necessarily be able to tell whether it was two women or two men or whatever. We were business partners for several years up until 2017. And she just wanted to go in a different direction. And I still wanted to continue with the direction that I was in. So I created a whole nother firm, this time with my initials, LAH Strategies. I initially was going to do my name, but surprisingly enough, there's another Latoya Henry in New York who does public relations. Craziest thing, we follow each other on Twitter. So she already had the name trademarked. But so I've been solo entrepreneur since the beginning, officially since the beginning of 2018. I've been doing public relations since 2001. So outside of a brief break where I had this great idea that I should try teaching, I did that for 2 years, long-term substitute teacher. That's why you could never talk bad to me about anybody in the education field. So I did that for 2 years. So I've been doing public relations for about 18 years now. That's just wild to me that it's been 18 years, but here I am. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I still have that the old company name in my phone, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Dr. Pugh?
Good evening. So, my name is Pamela Pugh, and I am the owner of Urban Regeneration LLC. And I will celebrate, or Urban Regeneration LLC will celebrate 11 or 10 years on August the 11th. So, that's coming up
Nice.
next week.
Mhm.
Nice.
So, I'll have to have some sort of celebration. So, I would like to say I'm as young as Latoya, but not. But I started in my background is chemical engineering. And I'll go back since Latoya started back to childhood. I always said that I wanted to help people. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to build, fix up houses. And as I got older, I realized I did get a chance to kind of do that. I went and received my doctorate degree in, actually, I have a doctor of public health, which pretty close to being a doctor in health. And my background is in environmental health, and so I've had the opportunity to help people and communities to help to make their communities safer. And a lot of that has been looking at housing and looking at how housing has been contaminated with things such as lead. And so I worked for public health for 14 years. Let me go back. I worked. I did radiation cleanup for a site. I ran a laboratory where I tested the materials for radiation, or tested the radiation levels of cleanup materials or soils, and to make sure that they were being cleaned up. I worked for a company where I was making um, water-based paints. I worked in an area where I was working with polymers. So I did a little bit on the chemical engineering area before I realized that what I really wanted to do was public health. And so I ventured into that area. And so for 14 years, I worked in public health, did a lot again with families, children, making sure that their environments were safe or made safer. And then it came a time when I realized, one, I wanted to make sure that I was able to finish my degree because it was taking a little while. But at two, I saw this space where faith based, community based organizations, academia, and government, the interfacing there needed to be some help and helping to better the communication and the partnership in those spaces and making sure that decisions that were made were inclusive of community. So I formed Urban Regeneration LLC with three other women. The three other women, they had full-time jobs. I left my job, but I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to do this full-time. And so they helped me to get started, and then I took, and the business was my idea, but they really helped me to move forward. And so I always like to tell that piece of history. But Urban Regeneration LLC is a consultancy that helps communities to become healthy, to improve health, but also making sure that we consider the economic factors, the socioeconomic factors that make communities healthy and make the people within them healthy. So I've had the privilege to do that for 10 years. Had a brief stint, 3 years, where I was the chief public health advisor for the city of Flint within that 10 years. So
So you were very much up close and personal to what the crisis that happened in
absolutely,
Flint.
I'm an on the ground person. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, so big up to that. So if you haven't noticed already, audience, I have some smarty arties on here. And the smarty arties have something in common, but I'm gonna let them share what they have in common. And I'll start with Latoya. So what
Uh,
school did you go to? All the
so,
universities you went to, and where do you currently live now?
so undergrad, went to the University of Michigan, and for grad school, I went to Florida A&M University. And I'm currently in Lathrop Village, right outside of Detroit, connected to Southfield. So in the Metro Detroit area. So very funny thing about, you said smarty arty, which is so funny because growing up, like I made the decision at 16 that I was like, once I graduate, I'm not going to college. I'm going to go to Specs Howard. That's where they're going to train me to be a reporter, and that's how I'm going to be on the news. So when it's college time, senior year, one day my dad's like, "Hey, why aren't you applying to any schools? You haven't asked me for any application money." I said, "Oh, no worries." I said, "I'm just gonna go to Specs Howard. It's like $35 to apply. And that's, I'm gonna learn there how to become a reporter. And that's it." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, where are you gonna live?" I was like, "What do you mean? I'm gonna live here." He's like, "Yeah, no, the plan is you're going to college. So if you don't plan to go to college, then you need to find some place to live." I said, "Okay." I'm thinking, that's fine. I have siblings. He said, "Oh, and you can't live with either of your brothers or sisters." I said, "What?" So I said, "Well, okay, fine." So I tell this because at the time at Renaissance, there was like on-site college admissions all the time. I had not attended any of them. And when you do the on-site, most likely they're offering you scholarships. They are telling you, what your financial aid package may be like. So I've missed all of this because in my mind, I don't need to attend any of these things because I'm not going to college. So I literally applied to college 3 days before the deadlines were. And this is the time of, this is no technology. This is, you have to mail it. It has to be postmarked at a certain time. So my mother gets all the money orders. I applied to 3 schools. I applied to Michigan, Spelman, and Howard. And I got into all 3, which, because that was my next plan. Oh, I'm applying late. I bet you I won't get in. Surprise, surprise. And so as a result of me not taking care of business and not doing the on-site admissions, when I did decide to go to U of M, I didn't have any of the extra like grants or anything that was offered because I waited so late. And so they offered me loans, right? And at first, my dad was like, "Well, I really don't want you to start accumulating loans. So let's just hold off before you say yes." And I said, "Okay." So I'm like, "Oh, wow, my parents are paying for the whole thing." And even though it was in-state tuition, it's still a lot of tuition, that tuition and room and board. And at the time, my father retired early and he was already going into his second year retirement and he was starting to build a business with my brother and with my oldest brother. And so he said, "Well, you know what? Just take the loan." He was like, "It's not that much." He said, "It'll definitely be something that we can work to pay off." No, so I was like, okay. So I take the loan. It's like a small loan because they base it upon family income. And side note, at that time, that's the first time that I ever realized how much money, how much money your parents make because you got to get to fill it out for the FAFSA. And I was like, "Where's all this money?" They're like, "This isn't real." And so I get offered loans. I start my freshman year, and then my father runs into trouble starting the business, right? Is taking up much more funds, much more money than expected, than predicted, right? So at the start of my second semester, freshman year, my dad needs to apply for an emergency plus loan to help me continue my freshman year. So my freshman year was like a roller coaster because of trying to get the funds necessary just to pay for that first year. In addition to you're trying to be focused on class, you're trying to keep the good grades, you're trying to do all these things. So my first year was definitely a roller coaster in terms of the funding. And luckily, my parents did get approved for that plus loan. So now we are me with the loan plus my parents with the loan. And that was the first year. And then the second year, it was a little bit better. I still took my loan amount increased. They didn't have to do the plus loan, but I'm now taking on more of a loan. I got offered more loan money, right? So each year that I'm at the University of Michigan, every increase of loan that they offer me, I took it to help, pay the difference.
Subsidize your cost, living.
Yeah, right. And even with once you cut off the housing bill, like the third year, I got an apartment with my friend, like with and I had a roommate, even still, but the tuition cost at Michigan is now rising, right? So it just still was, I couldn't avoid it. Like it was just, if I wanted to continue and get my degree and be able to go to college. So I can't imagine not having loans to help, help me get through school. Yeah. So that was the undergrad experience. My grad experience was different, right? Because you're thinking, FAMU offered me full tuition and a graduate assistantship. And the tuition, so they covered the tuition. The graduate assistantship was what I was supposed to live on. 20 hours a week, got paid. I don't know how I was supposed to pay rent or eat on that graduate assistantship. So I also got offered a loan. Now, they offered 2 loans. In theory, hindsight, I should have only taken the one, but I took both. And I didn't need to take both, but they offered both. So I said, oh, I'm just taking it. I'll be able to pay it back. It's no thing. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. Right.
Because I'm like, yeah, everybody's like, oh, well, they offered you 2, take 2. Why would you not take the 2? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to take the 2. I should have just taken the 1. I really only needed the 1. So it's the education. So,
well, I want to interject and say, you're saying you only needed 1. Based on what? Why did you say you only?
So I'm saying I only needed 1 because 1 would have helped me with the rent and be able to eat. Like, and
but we have this misconception that's all we need. We just, as long as I got a roof. But you right. you might want to go to the movies. You need your whole well-being.
Yep.
Right. How did you pay for doctor's visits? How do you pay to go to and fro? How did you pay
and
for gas?
And so car? I was just getting ready to say. Because sure enough, when I was there, I got a spider bit me in my apartment in the middle of the night. So I had a huge medical emergency, right? So I had to pay to get to the doctor, even though I was still under my parents' insurance, but it was out of network. So there was this, I had to pay an immediate amount just to start, treatment and get medicine. So yes, so you're right. So it was, so in both instances, yes, I took loans, and that's what, that's how I got those 2 degrees. Like it was no getting around it for the student loans. And I know that the dynamic of student loans is different now. When I hear my young people talk about, immediately after graduation or immediately after their semester is done, they have to start entering payment, and it was different. We finished, you got 6 months, they called you, do this class,
and
you could defer. And it's not like that now. But again, I cannot imagine how it would have happened for me. And on paper, I am a part of a family that's middle class, right? 2 parents who worked very decent jobs. So people may be like, well, how did you need it? But in my experience, and I'll talk about this a little later because I'm an advisor for a youth council, right? And my young people who are a part of families that are like mine or even more upper middle class, these are my kids that get stuck. These are my kids who, a lot of them, they want to go to Howard. Howard is $40,000, right? It's expensive, right? And they may not have had these real life conversations with their parents and their families about how we are going to accomplish this. How are we going to meet this? And so many of them come back the next year. They're crushed because they couldn't finish it at their dream school. And so the amounts that they're offered or what they, some of them, their parents don't want them to take loans, but they don't have another viable option. So what do they do? So how do we yeah, so this is a great conversation because
Mhm.
how do we pitch this that yes, go to school.
Mhm.
Even if you go to a trade school, it's most likely not free.
But let's put a pin on that because we're going to
Okay.
talk about that because on the last call we had, it was Gen X call, and I asked the panelists to say, give me a word, give me an emotion about how you feel, and it was very interesting the words that came up. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want Dr. Pugh to talk about where she went to school, where she currently resides, and you guys will see the connection soon because y'all like flip. Go ahead.
We did flip. So I went to, well, let me start. I went to Delta College, which is a college that is in near Bay City, Michigan. And I did that because my dad worked there and I was able to go to school for free. So I started when I was in high school and I was able to finish my associate's degree within 1 year after graduating from high school. Uh, and while I was in my first year of college, I fell deathly ill. So it was in February of 1990. You'll be able to calculate my age. It was in February of 1990. And I was in the hospital for 2 months and then healing. And while I was hospitalized, I had liver failure, I had kidney failure, and everything in between. While I was hospitalized, my two sisters wrote my application to Florida A&M University. So I applied for Florida A&M University. It was my father's alma mater at the time. It was my older sister's alma mater.
Mhm.
It was where I was just going to go. And so thank God they did that for me. So as I'm awakening from being ill and in the hospital, they were telling me, you've applied and you've been accepted. And so when I went there, I was going straight there. I was majoring in chemical engineering. So I like jumped into my third year of college. I was like right in the middle of heavy coursework. I didn't stay at the dorms. I went straight into the apartments. And my father and my mother really impressed upon us, family, that we were just going to go to college. And the loans that I took in undergrad were pretty minor, um, pretty uneventful. Like you, Latoya, we were middle class, so there wasn't a lot that we could do except for apply for loans, and um, it was costly being in Florida. Like University of Michigan, if you're an out-of-state student in Florida, you pay a little bit opposite because you are an in-state student, but
Mhm.
in-state students in Florida, I mean, they pay minimal for college because it's baked into their property tax. But if you're out of state, it's comparable probably to University of Michigan, but maybe University of Michigan's in-state. But it was a lot. It was a lot to be there, to be living in an apartment, to have to um, have gas. I had a car. My parents did buy me a car when I was there, so I was really blessed in undergrad. Speed up to graduate school. I did on job on campus for my master's of science, and I went to University of Michigan. So undergrad, Florida A&M University. Graduate, I have 2 degrees from University of Michigan. And so that's where I took the downfall as far as debt with student loans. And for me, I think it was because I had a degree in chemical engineering, but I've always been a person who's had to work from the heart. I have to work someplace where I find purpose,
Mhm.
and where I feel led to be. And so while I was preparing to go to have a degree in chemical engineering, and my classmates were coming out, made at that time it was a lot. 50, $60,000 was a lot, coming out and going straight
Mhm.
into a job. So that's what I was prepared to do. But as I may have mentioned earlier, I realized I didn't like smells. I didn't like chemicals. I wanted to know how chemicals impacted the human health. And you can see from having illness, that was part of what drove me is by falling ill, you want to know how does the environment or how do things impact the health. And so I remember when I went to public health, I went to local public health to work, and I was doing work at Dow Chemical. I remember the manager of the lab coming in, like, Pam, like, almost like, did you bump your head? You're going back there? And then the people, when I was taking the job, they were like, now, are you sure you want to do this? So I took those jobs, but then I also went to the University of Michigan for a Master of Science, and then I also went on for my DRPH, a Doctor of Public Health, and I was really able to do work that was in my community. Community-based participatory research is what I did, but I also took out loans to take up the slack, probably for um, where I thought I was going to be, but just keeping up with the cost of living. Honestly, I believe that my first job in public health was under $30,000,
Mhm.
and that was with years of experience under my belt and a degree in chemical engineering. So I had classmates who were coming out probably making 30,000 at least. That was us coming out, so they probably were up to 35, 40,000 more than what I was making at the time. So I think that played a critical role there in that. And
Mhm.
so I racked up a lot of debt in my master and doctorate program. And my parents really worked hard so that didn't have to happen. So that's on me. So
Mhm.
here
Mhm.
we are.
So I think you answered, you pretty much hit, a lot of the things that I was going to ask. You talked about, I heard Latoya talk about taking out loans and that Parent Plus, and I heard, you talking about your choice of university and how much it costs to go to that university, and how you came to that university. Um, if you were talking to, and Latoya indicated this, and this is where you might want to go into it, would you recommend to a friend or loved one to take out student loans, knowing what you know now? And Latoya, maybe I'll defer to you because you talked about being the youth council advisor for NAACP. Just for those who don't know, all three of us are babies of the NAACP. So that's how we know each other. And so, Pam comes from a long lineage of activism. Her dad is really solid in the Saginaw area and an activist. And so Latoya was doing youth council back in the day. And I, served for a long time at the state conference level and in my branch, the Southern Oakland County NAACP. So that's how we know each other, because we spend way too much time with folks 2 times our age in somebody's room with some neon lights taking notes. Just so y'all know. Okay. Back to you, Latoya.
So I would recommend it. I just would recommend that they are educated and that they have a plan. Like, I think I took the loans, but I didn't have a financial plan. Like, I didn't, I just was like, okay, I'm going to take these loans. I mean, and then I'm going to pay them back. That's what you think. It's a loan. You get money and you're going to have to pay it back, right?
Yes.
So have a financial plan when you are taking the loans. Really assess what's happening. For instance, it's great if you get into your dream school. If your dream school, say your dream school is USC, so you're going from Michigan to the West Coast, and you have to factor in, right? Because I don't think 17 to 18-year-olds think about the cost of living, right? Because they've been taken care of, right? So they don't have any concept of, okay, so I get there, I may be in a dorm. Are you going to have a full meal plan? Are you going to have a partial meal plan? Are you thinking you're coming home for the holidays? How much is that going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
Books, like you said, maybe a nice shirt every once in a while. And so like really starting to practice a budget and having a financial plan. What happens if there is a family emergency? How, what will that do? Unfortunately, at the end of my freshman year, my oldest brother passed away. And it was right at the beginning of the break, but I can't imagine if it had happened and I was far away in school. Like I would have definitely been like, okay, so how am I getting home? Like, so you have to think about those things, the unexpected, or like you said, if you get sick, God forbid, and if you're away from your family, how will you who will be able to help you, or how will you be able to navigate, where you're going for medical treatment? Are you out of you need to know, are you out of your parents' network? What does that mean? Because if you have insurance but you're out of the network, what does that mean? That's exactly, like I said, what I experienced, being in Tallahassee with the spider bite. And so you just have to, I just did not think about a plan, right? And even when going to grad school, like I knew, like I said, I didn't have to pay tuition and I was going to be working, but what else outside of those things, right? I'm not living in a dorm. They didn't have graduate housing. So I had to get an apartment. How is this rent going to get paid? How are you going to have sustenance? So, and I did not have a car. And so so that was the one thing I had to sacrifice. I'm gonna have to take the bus because they kept saying, at that time for FAMU, you just show your ID. FAMU students, you can use the bus for free. But then that's another, that's something else that you have to factor. So it's just taking loans makes you grow up. It makes you start to think about things somewhat. Yeah, some things that you might not have necessarily had to think about because somebody's been taking care of you for a while. So I'm not opposed to young people taking the loans. I just want them to be aware of the responsibility that goes with it. And now there's such a difference between government loans and the private loans. And that's actually where my concern is, like the private loans, because so many students feel like they don't fit the requirements or they're not getting the government loans. And so they have this desire to go to school and to complete and to, further their education, but all they are receiving is the private loan. And private loans, sometimes, they're, while it may be easier to get, but the return is where it gets you. And so just really investigate that. And don't get caught up on this is your dream school, because you can continue to go to school throughout your life. And so maybe starting off in the beginning, you might not be able to do the dream school, but you may be able to do it a little bit later with a different set of finances. So I'm not opposed to telling the young people to take the loans, but really and truly investigate it and understand what the terms mean. And don't be afraid to ask questions like, so I have to start paying this like 30 days after, like, make sure you are clear and you understand.
Yeah. You said a few things that I want to address. One of them was, you talked about they don't know that they've been taken care of. So we know that kids that brains aren't fully developed until they're 25. That's just a physiological fact. Right. The second thing is when you have no depth of life experience, I don't expect you would have no idea. So I think that is fair that they don't anticipate those things. With that said, we're having a very privileged conversation right now, right? So you're assuming that there is someone that can tell them to create a budget. You're assuming that, once they get across the United States, there's going to be, that ability to send back. I know of people who died in their family and they just go mourn them where they're at because they just don't have the finances or the wherewithal to get back. So I just want to like also include the layer of, yes, we can make better decisions, but there's also something a little funky about the structure of what's happening. We all know as Black women, we don't make it. It was just yesterday was Black Women's Parity Day about how much we earn, either yesterday or the day before. So even if you believed in the promise of going to college and making money, you're gonna go, like Pam just said, you're gonna go, perhaps you do make big bucks, but you're probably not gonna make as much as your white counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you're already behind.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure that we're layering in that conversation of, yes, we do the good things, our mama, daddy, them, and we're middle class, upper middle class, whatever. And we did the things, and we still needed the loans to live.
Yeah.
And for some of us, we felt bad or guilty or ashamed, because that was one of the words that came up. Ashamed of having the student debt and ashamed that we made the decisions that we did, because we were like, oh, maybe I shouldn't get that loan because I didn't need those jeans, or I didn't need, but you did. You did, right? And so I think we should talk about that and the exorbitant layering of interest rates
Yes.
that stacks that makes the student don't let how if it was just the student loans, I mean, most of us would be like, but I can do it. But it's the crushing interest rates that get us, right? And so Pam, I want you to talk a little bit about that. Like, would you have made, based on your student loans and based on your business, because I want to transition a little bit into the business piece, do you make different choices based on your student debt in your business? Or your personal life, because I've heard people say, oh, I'm not having a kid, or I'm not buying this house, or I'm not doing this, based on your student loan debt.
Absolutely. It definitely impacts your lifestyle one way or the other. And you and Latoya hit on something very key, is that if many of us who really want to do something to help our communities often have to make that choice of what type of income we're going to have. I think that's one of the points that I want to make here, because it doesn't matter if your parents are middle class, upper middle class, especially for African Americans. There are people who make far less than I do and have far less education than I do, but because of historical factors,
Yes.
property that's been left in the home. One of the things that I did learn while I was at the local health department, I learned a lot there, but one thing that I learned, I watched people live in like a trailer for a couple of years, or an old house for a couple of years, while they built their dream homes. So you, like, when I'm here in Saginaw, I can drive in Saginaw and I can point out homes that are beautiful homes, but there were property that was left there by parents. Their friends came, anteed up some beer, pizza. Somebody did the septic tank. Somebody did the foundation. Somebody else did the roofing. So they got the land. They got their friends that built the home. So there are some structural things that those of us as African Americans, it doesn't matter middle class or upper middle class, let alone some of the things that Latoya mentioned,
Right.
that we don't necessarily, they're going to put us in a different position. Nicole, you talked about equity in pay. We can also talk about jobs that we just know are not beneficial to us and our communities, our health, our peace of mind,
Yes.
or they just don't really use our talents in the way that our talents should be used. And so we've created these spaces. But absolutely, when we've created these jobs in these spaces that we're doing the work that we know is meaningful, and we also have this student loan debt, there are going to be sacrifices made, and there are sacrifices made. I go to my friends' homes sometimes, and that's where I can vacation or Airbnb. I live in a bodice home. I love my home though. I'm good. I'm at peace. But there are decisions that will be made based upon those decisions that you made to take out those loans. Would I tell students to take out loans? I would say work like it's a job to get grants. When I
Mm,
look at my father and how he works with my nieces and nephews, who have some of the same income constraints that I would have had, but they work that thing like a job, trying to
mhm.
figure out where there's grant or where there is are grants, where are there are scholarships, and they've really been able to work that, and they've been blessed to have him. But if students can find mentors that help them seek out scholarships, first time student scholarships, some of those things, make sure you're doing that first.
Mhm.
Do not be shy. Do not be shy. Know that you deserve that money more than anybody else, more than anyone else. And you make sure you try to get yourself some mentors that can help you to seek out those funding opportunities. Then go after um, the loans if you have to. But to Latoya's point, get one of those calculators where now they have calculators,
Yeah.
and I have like three or four where I can look to see what my credit score is doing based upon all of these things. But there are some calculators that you can look at for your student loan debt and what you will have to pay. Because let me say this, uh, depending on where you are in your career, there have been times where I have made money, and it's just like whoa when they start taking, because there's opportunities for you to base your what you have to pay your monthly
Yes.
loan
Your payment
payment
plan. Hmm.
is can be based upon your income. I won't even tell you the differences that I've gone through, but
Hmm.
it's been hundreds of dollars. And I remember one time I was telling this lady, I was like, "That's my payment now." I'm just like, I might be better off not working. So hey, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot when you learn that you're an adult, and these things are you
Yeah.
have to deal with choices that you've made. To
Yeah.
Nicole's point, I'll say one more thing is that there's a green light when it comes to loans. You green light, green light, green light. It's like you don't get a yellow. You go straight to red, and you realize, where did this debt come from? And they want their money.
Yes,
So
they do.
Mhm.
you have to try to find someone to help you figure out, or get a calculator and know what you're going to owe. Because, like we said, the more you make, your payment
Yep.
may go up. It's not like I thought, oh, I'm going to go out and get a really
That's
good
right.
job and pay my loans, but they're going to take out by percentage
Yeah.
of your income. And so, yes, there are decisions that have to be made based on that, because they are coming to get that money that they allowed you to rack up the debt on.
Right.
Yeah.
We're at 6:47. And so I wanna, if folks have questions, I want you to put them in the chat right now. I know a couple people got on a little late or past when we started, but I put our website in the chat, 1,000 Women Strong, so you can find out more information there. And before we leave, I'm gonna put, if you haven't already filled out the petition, there's a petition that we are having folks sign because we want to get 10,000 signatures out of Michigan and 50,000 signatures total out of 5 targeted states. And we want to take those petitions to the White House and say, hey, remember you said you were going to do something about the student debt? And so that's the conversation we want to have when we have 50,000 signatures in hand. We want most of them to be from Black women because Black women suffer suffer disproportionately from student loan debt. And so just so you know, that is the goal as it relates to the student loan debt conversation. But before I ask folks, if they want to put some questions in the Q&A, give me one word, and I'll go back to Latoya, that describes your feeling. And it might be 2 words, it might be a phrase that describes your feeling as it relates to your current student debt situation.
Um, Eternal.
I missed it. What did she say? Mine
I
broke
said
up.
I said eternal. At
Yeah.
this point, so let me say, so you know, when the conversation has been going, well, maybe they'll take off 10,000, and some people are like, oh, that's not going to be enough for me, or maybe they'll take off 50. Whatever they take off, I will accept.
Amen.
And like you said, it is the interest, not so much like my total amount, it's that accumulating interest.
Mhm.
And you know, I used to think, starting off as an entrepreneur, since we're talking about entrepreneurship, you know, thank goodness for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you call it, because it was almost impossible for me to get insurance as an entrepreneur until that happened. And so it wasn't until this year that I finally paid off all of the back medical bills that I had when I was uninsured.
Mhm.
And I literally would make decisions on, okay, well, if I'm not feeling well, how long will I feel well before I need to go to an urgent care
Mhm.
or, God forbid, an emergency room, because I don't have any insurance, right? So that is one of the worst feelings, that you are making like decisions on your health because you don't have any insurance. And so even though I've paid off the medical debt now, but so now my largest looming debt is still the student loan debt. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, well, maybe I'll get that one big client. I'm just going to take all of that money and use it too. And then I'm like, and then what?
Right.
And so that's when you said the word right now, it's like, yep, that debt is, it's just, it's eternal right now. That's how it feels like. It feels like it's eternal. And so I definitely hope that they 10, 25,000, 50,000, whatever the amount is, it needs to happen. We can't continue to make these promises to our young people, in particular in regards to education, and we don't have viable options for them, right? Like we just can't continue on with that. And so we can't, and like I said, even with, I know young people who go to trade school, but again,
Yes.
they may still need a loan or some financial assistance to even go to trade school. And so you're right. I am on my young people's head about scholarships, grant opportunities. We have a group meeting every time somebody sends me a scholarship opportunity. I am sharing it. I am encouraging them to apply. We had one young man who applied for one of the scholarships that I put, and it made the difference. And there's nothing wrong that he was initially going to go to Wayne State, but at that time, because of his finances and his family's option, that was the only thing that he could afford, and he applied for a scholarship, and he ended up getting like a $25,000 scholarship that made the world of difference between then he was able to go to his dream school, and it was able to take care of the tuition for the first 2 years, right? So it's important, yes, like you said, we need to be resources and mentors to our young people so they can know. I tell them all of the stories about from my what happened my first year, to grad school, and yes, I know, Lord, I know they frontal lobes not developed. But that's a whole nother
That's
that's a whole nother conversation. I know. I can tell you about, Lord, these young people, God bless them. But share with them, let them know your experiences. Like, it's no point in you having the experience and you hiding it from them. Like, they need to know. And then also too, whether you're a parent, aunt, uncle, mentor, you be aware too of the current, of the way that the loans work now and how
Yeah.
financial aid works now, because
Change.
it's different
Yes.
from when I was applying in 94,
Same.
to the way that they have to the way that the young people have to apply now. And so just be aware of those, be aware of those things. But yes, eternal is my word. That's how it feels right now.
Dr. P, what's your word?
Whew. I guess I could use two. I could say overwhelmed,
Mm.
but I could also say definitely determined. Because I think Latoya said it. I mean, when you look at it, it's overwhelming.
Mhm.
Uh, there are times when I'm talking to the student loan folks. They're very nice. They're always very nice.
They are.
And I have some good conversations with them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'm going to live because I worked hard to get this degree. I worked hard to get 4 degrees, an associate's, a master of science, a bachelor of chemical engineering, a doctor of public health.
That's
I'm
right.
not dumb. I'm not stupid. I love people. I love my people. I choose to be in the trenches helping my people because that's where the help is needed.
Right.
Uh, so it's overwhelming, but I refuse to stop. I refuse to stop living.
Mhm.
I am a believer in Christ,
Mhm.
and I know there are things that I have to do, but I know that in prayer there are things that He will help me to be able to get through. So I'm determined to be what He called me to be, even though this debt is on my shoulders and on my back. So
Mhm.
I'm talking to people who are my age,
Yes.
because we've talked to the young people.
Yes.
So we have to hold our heads up high because we know embarrassment,
Right.
embarrassment,
Yeah.
regret,
Shame.
that all comes. But in a time like now, we have to be innovative,
Yes.
and we have to form alliances like this one right here. We
Mhm.
have to push for reforms and for policy change. We have to educate our young people, but we have to hold each other up, and we have to be what we were put on this earth to be, and keep moving forward with our heads held up high, like my sister Shirley here.
That's
And
right. So yes. So I just want to draw your attention for the folks who are in the audience and here. If you happen to be in the Black Greek letter system, Shirley Chisholm, which is prominently displayed behind Dr. Pam Pugh, is a Delta.
in
And
pink and green.
I,
and there
and
would
that's,
be
I always
there,
notice, I'm like,
there would be no Kamala Harris without Shirley Chisholm.
This is
Okay,
true.
unbought and
That's
unbossed.
true.
And so the lovely Dr. Pugh, as well as her sisters, are all delightful AKAs. Some of my closest friends are AKAs. But we know that Shirley is a Delta.
And
Okay,
she
I just
likes pink and green. She loves. I like her in
fine.
pink and
It's fine.
green.
History has been made. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm glad you said that too, Pam, about being determined.
Hmm.
Because, and you, as you mentioned, like I have friends who are lawyers, who are doctors, and they have just finished paying off their student loans. And there was, I saw as you mentioned, Nicole, like Black women have the most student loans, but it's also these Black women who are in these high achieving
Yeah.
fields, right?
Yeah.
Because they are determined, they are going
Hmm.
for the goal. And so my father said to me a while ago, he said, do what you can with it, but don't let it be like thinking about that student loan debt crushing
Yeah,
and
anchor.
and right. And it, is defeating to you because
Yes.
it served its
Right.
purpose for you. And so I'm never like, I've encountered people who've just been super down about it. And I'm like, you
Yes.
have to live your life.
Yes.
And my next statement may be a little unorthodox, but the federal government or Fannie Mae, whomever,
Okay.
they're not
Maggie.
going under, right? They're not going under because of my loan. Okay. That is not. And so you have to put it into perspective. And I'm not saying you not be responsible or
Hmm.
egregious, but you
No. Right.
cannot let that be defeating. Definitely be determined. That's a really, really important point. Definitely be determined.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that we're coming to the hour of 7 o'clock, and I want to thank you both for being a wealth of information. As I told you all before, some of you got on late. These smarty arties on here are super smart and know the things. And so I appreciate them coming and talking to us. We will be having a series every other week. We'll have every other week for Michigan, we'll have a town hall that I'll be hosting. And the first one was Gen X. This one was Black entrepreneurs, and the next one will be about millennials and student debt, right? And then we have one coming in September, Black women with disabilities and student debt,
Mm.
because they navigate the world differently, right? And so we often don't talk about our disabled. There's a lot of things we don't talk about in the Black community. That's another story. But we definitely don't lift up the disabled, and disabled can look like a lot of things. And so I think that's an important conversation to have. So be on the lookout on social media or whatever for these upcoming town hall events. I put in the chat a couple links. One is the link to 1000 Women Strong, so you can get more information. This is an organization that took off in May. So we are actually building this thing. And those of you who have been in the trenches and know what building an organization is, even if it's founded by a Black woman, even if it's founded by a Black woman who is under the umbrella of the badass Stacey Abrams, we still got to do the things, right? And so if you don't see something on the website, feel free to give me a ping and let me know. I hope you all can sign on to the petition. I hope you all can spread the word. If you want to tell your story, let me know. And I'm already let them know y'all gonna tell y'all stories, so don't worry about it. If you want to tell your story, let me know, and I will pass that on so someone can get in touch with you, because we need to build these stories. Those of you who do the work in the community and do this organizing and building know it's about the stories. We have a ancestral lineage of storytelling and storytelling to move things, right? And so that's what we're leaning into, that particularly as Black women, to get the things done. And again, I want to reiterate, for me, I'm excited, one, because to be working in an organization that was founded by a Black woman to center Black women's issues, and the tangible thing to come out of that is building a national Black Women's Directory. I'm super excited about that, and I look forward to that happening.
Yay.
Thank you for coming. And if anyone wants to send me a ping or that's on, feel free to do that if you have any questions. And everyone have a good night and enjoy your evening.
Good night. Great topic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.